Okay, let me just set up the overlay real quick, guys. There we go. Welcome back to the Starbow Ladder Cup number 2. This is the round of 8, aka the quarterfinals. It's when the first best of 3's begun, and this is the first best of 3 we're at today. This is game number 2, and spawning in the top right corner of the map, playing for Nerosoft. It's going to be the light blue Protoss player, Romson.
In the bottom left, as the purple Terran, it is NasD.
Yeah, so some people complaining about me calling him NasD. I don't know if there's a different way to pronounce it. I'll ask him after the series if he makes it through the brackets, but that's just kind of, I see the capital D, and that's kind of what my brain assumes wants to be emphasized upon. StarCraft players always have the weirdest pronunciations for their names. Like Snoot, for example, big Snoot. I'll never get over that one. But it's worth talking about before we get into this actual matchup here, guys. We'll keep an eye on the probe while we talk about this. This is the Starbow Ladder Cup. Now, you might be wondering, like, what does that mean? There's no in-game ladder system for Starbow. The developers of the game created their own ladder system through a series of points located on starbowmod.com. I don't know if they're still looking for web developers. I know they were during the last tournament, but it's at the very least worth checking out the site if you're interested in Starbow. Now, as well, I want to point out, if you guys don't have StarCraft 2, if you don't own Heart of the Swarm, that's actually totally fine. You can still play Starbow. You can do it for free because Starbow is done 100% through the StarCraft 2 arcade, which is absolutely free to play now, as of a couple months ago. So if you're curious about this game, if you're like, hey, that looks kind of interesting, but I never want to drop $40 for like Heart of the Swarm or whatever, go try it. You can play it for free. That's kind of the big emphasis. All you do is go to the arcade and check out Starbow. And if you go to starbowmod.com, they've got instructions on how to deal with the ladder and how to get involved if you want to be competitive and play in these cups. Now, it's worth noting, it took 3,000 ladder points. Not like you pay 3,000 ladder points, but you have had to have had a minimum of 3,000 ladder points in order to play in these tournament cups. That way you know, like, okay, these guys are actually dedicated to playing and improving their craft. Their StarCraft.
As opposed to their Warcraft, which actually
well, I mean, they're at war with it, whatever. The joke wasn't gonna be worth it in the end. I'm gonna give a big shout out though to Fritos. Fritos, thank you for your sub, man. First sub of the day. I think that puts us at 45. It's like one of the last few days of March. We're at 45 out of 50 now. So thank you very much, man. It's so close to our sub goal for the month. But big shout out to Fritos. Make sure everyone gives him a nice Tasha clap in chat. But anyways, continuing on with the course of this game, the reality for Romson, guys, is there's no loser's bracket to this. He could be out in the flash very quickly if he loses this matchup. He's got to pull it together, and whatever it was that held him back in game number 1, hopefully he'll be able to get over and succeed here in game number 2 and take it to game number 3 and really give us the best series that possibly could happen. As it would appear some of my favorites today haven't shown up. Apparently, Red Bandit and Franskar are both MIA. And those were 2 of my favorite players from the last tournament to cast, so I'm a little bummed about that.
Well, the thing about Romson, the thing about what NasD did was that even if you know it's coming, which Romson actually scouted it, it's really powerful. People will spend days, so many games, just going off of an old replay, practicing against stuff like that, like a 2-fact or a 5-fact. It was actually a 4-fact, but whatever, because it's like the Immortal Centurion, I suppose. Like, you know it's coming, but you have to be like perfect to hold it, right? It's so difficult, and that's why a lot of Terrans do it. And that's like some of the first things you learn is to do those 2 base all-ins like that. Although all-ins is a loose term in Starbow, still. There's actually a different build order as well for NasD, just a little bit. Put the tech lab on the racks and so on, but came to the same thing, which was siege tech and tanks.
One bold Zalt gonna get in here, but unfortunately we'll be driven back quickly. The nice thing about siege tanks too, guys, for those who don't know, they got a moving shot in Starbow. So if they're unsieged, their turrets actually swivel around and act like a real tank instead of just like running away in purple mode. That is one thing. Yeah, there's a lot of things that are unique to Starbow, and you can't really wish for it in StarCraft 2 because it only really works in Starbow. But I really wish the moving shot was something that was in StarCraft 2 normally.
Well, you could argue differently about that. I mean, I know Lelouch does. Yeah, that really awesome video that was... His voice is perfect for videos like that, but about, one of it was the moving shot, and the turrets, and the turrets acting like a turret, rather, I guess is the way to put it. But
well, I just feel like we see some rare cases of mech being used, but it's always like a death ball, and you always have to have tanks sieged up. I'd love for there to be scenarios where you could actually like micro tanks around like you can in Starbow. I think that'd be really cool.
Well, like I guess the whole thing, there's actually, besides Starbow, which takes a lot from Brood War as well, there's another thing that I forget what it's called, but, it's another arcade, and it's pretty much trying to advance StarCraft 2, less so than trying to bring the best, I guess, of Brood War. What is it called? I can't remember. Anyways,
I like that it's very much its own unique game. It's like borrowed elements from both.
Well, yeah, it is. But this other game's like less about bringing back anything from the old days. But anyways, like I wish we had a game that was literally like everything that everyone ever suggests for David came to change in StarCraft 2, and they just put it in there, and everyone can try it and be like, oh, that's okay. David Kim's right. Like lurkers will not win, or it would not work in StarCraft 2, even if you change the mining mechanics, the turret mechanics, the actual mechanics, whatever. They're just too smart or whatever. But anyways,
I feel like that needs to be like in air quotes or something.
Well, it's like, it's the best way to put it. Like, the AI not being dumb changes a lot of StarCraft. That's why you can't have Brood War again unless you actually dumb it down, and then people won't buy it.
Well, we got a pretty passive game coming out this time. We do have the third base for Romson up really quickly. This is not something you typically see in a regular TVP, of course, but of course you don't see Dragoons either, and it's Starbow. Romson's going to be perfectly fine to take this base. One thing he does have to keep in mind, though, with Texas, you've got multiple angles of attack, multiple locations to be attacked from, and Vulture's going to be a hell of a thing. All it takes is about 2 or 3 to get into your mineral lines. 4 is usually the perfect number to lose half of those probes very quickly. So I'm a little bit concerned in that regard. His Dragoons are nicely spread over the natural, but if any Vultures run towards that third, it's free pickings.
Yeah. I believe that this third was faster than the last one, which I like. I don't really like, honestly, when they stay on 2 base, even if it does, advance them tech-wise, like the first Pro Player we saw. I'll say it didn't work. Getting this really great economy and being able to meet your opponent, in the middle of the map or even further forward, and then slowly drain off units, but have the economy behind it to eventually wear them down, is the best way to play. Not maybe just this is definitely better, but it's a lot more entertaining, I feel, than just what we saw last time, which was NasD pushing past and winning.
Now, just so we get this out of the way, we got the Iron Thrusters finally coming out too, so it's more of that the Vulture-related tech for that speed boost. But I want to give a quick shout out before the action starts out. Guava Guy 30 and Desor underscore for the subs. Thank you guys. We got a bit of a train going this game. Woo, chugga, chugga, woo. That'll put us at, doing math top of my head, I think 47 out of 50. So close, so close. Thank you guys for your subs.
Dude, what is the LiDAR transmitter?
The LiDAR what?
It just researched on Engineering Bay, and I didn't get to see what it was.
That's the thing that makes the Orbital Command Center have charges for scan instead of taking energy.
Ah, okay. That makes sense then.
So for those who don't know, you get your scanner sweep like normal. This actually puts it on a cooldown based system, but it's free, so you can use all the energy you want on overcharges for the rest of the game, and not have to worry about burning any energy on scans. I mean, technically you could call down SCVs, I guess, but nobody really does that. They're not like mules. They're not free. They still cost money. It's inefficient. But these supply things, I guess, for those who are unfamiliar with Starbow, you've been seeing these dropped all game all day on top of Terran buildings. This is kind of like a chrono boost for a Terran player, basically. Makes units builds a little bit quicker, but this army in the middle of the map for NasD is looking pretty scary. That's a lot of vultures. That's a lot of spider mines.
That is a very scary army. And again, Romson didn't go out and meet it. I mean, he had no idea that it was even coming, I guess, until the observer saw it about halfway through. And now it's going to be at the front door knocking. Now, the good thing is that I don't think NasD will be quite confident enough to push through that choke. So Romson can do a double-pronged attack, which is what he is setting up right now.
And I really like that because, I mean, Siege Tanks, they got such a long cooldown in this game, guys. If you're not focus firing, you're going to have a bad time. But pushing forward here, nice observer coverage. Getting a lot of these Spider-Mines get picked up. But this is the thing about Spider-Mines. If they're not doing damage, they're buying you a lot of time. They're the perfect free unit, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, this does cause NasD to move forward. He's going to start attacking that third, and Romson will probably have to give it up.
I think he went too preemptively with the Archons. He should have really waited for that back end to come in, but he will clean up a couple of the tanks on the retreat. Vulture's going to try and do what they can, but it looks like Zealots will break the siege line. Siege Tanks being forced to unsiege, or a couple whereas he gets back in position really quickly there. A storm being slapped down on top of the Vultures, but not enough remaining. The Siege Tanks are still in 4, and that's a lot of damage on top of these Dragoons. The Vultures are a little bit irrelevant, but they are going to be that buffer that he needs.
They were all clumped up. A few more tank shots, and they all would have been dead. Luckily, he focused on the Zealots.
Next round of Vultures coming in, though.
Yeah.
Good trade for Romson. I mean, his base still isn't clear of danger, but he clears most of the tanks, and that's just the scary part about this.
It wasn't actually that bad. You know, I don't think he's actually going to lose the third, which is pretty nice. Vultures, of course, can't take it down that fast, so he just has to wait maybe for another.
Why's that not going to boost? Look here, he just dived the probes instead of the Nexus.
I think what he's trying to do right here is that he's actually trying to win the game. So he thinks eventually the probes will go down. So, you know, try and stall out the Protoss units on top of the ramp until that happens.
I mean, right now this base is slowly but surely going down.
Yeah, it is going to go down. Just can't break through. There's so many vultures, actually. Like, the siege tanks are usually, like, what is really scary, but the amount of vultures that he has, Romson just can't break through them.
Army supply, though, still fairly even. The difference is, guys, Romson's army supply, I feel, is a little inefficient compared to that of NasD's, because, I mean, the Vultures they're just getting chrono boosted out, like 3-2 at a time. He's got the reactor up here, just constantly, not chrono boost, sorry, overcharged out, but now we got some Dark Templar in the mix, which I'm a little bit curious about. Send a couple of these across the map, might go for a counterattack. He's got an Archon available still. This will soak a lot of hits and not deal a ton of damage, but still splash damage nonetheless. But that's just, I mean, that's the kind of thing I was worried about. Like, you take that third base as early as you do, you get a little bit of mining out of it, sure, but it's so exposed like this.
Well, I don't really think it was I would have expected more like that being a problem for Vulture run-bys, but NSE did exactly what it did last time, which was just push forward. So whether or not he took a third base was kind of irrelevant. This was just would have happened at the natural instead.
I'm trying to break this, but Spider-Man's still being thrown down on top. There's a couple of Dark Templar. There's one left remaining in this. He's actually taking out quite a few units, I think. What's his kill count at?
Yeah.
5? Not too bad.
It's always, you know, that desert maneuver. Maybe they don't have a stand. You take on a few tanks. Definitely well worth it.
Almost gets another that splash damage. I mean, we don't have War Prisms this time, which is really unfortunate. And again, like, even if it was maybe not War Prisms, like a Scout. I mean, there's no anti-aero to NasD, and if Romson could identify this, maybe he could find some way to capitalize on it, but still trying to break this army. It's not easily done, especially when trying to push uphill. If
he had a third thing, like right now he's really only using Dragoons and some Zealots and like Archons occasionally, but if he had a War Prism or if he had Arbiters, which actually might have been, you know, something he tried to go a little bit faster to, he actually made me to break this already. You know, one thing that you can get is faster tech when they're doing a 2-base push, and Romson was unfortunately never able to do that.
You know, there's, again, I kind of brought it up a little bit before, but what I would have liked to have seen too, especially because there's no anti-air, if he had invested in some Sentinels, I think would have been fantastic as well. Sentinels don't do a lot of damage in and of themselves, but if you went for the Null Warp, that AoE, well, the splash damage is nice, but the slow and the Vultures, then all of a sudden you can catch them. They can't run around like crazy with their Iron Thruster upgrade. Yeah,
and you can actually drag mines into the Vultures, which he was trying to do a little bit, but you just can't unless they're slowed. They'll run away.
Yeah, Spider-Man's take an awkward amount of time to activate, so it's very easy for Zealots to just drag, as I was talking about. But, you know, the army supply is still surprisingly even. The downside for Romson, he can't push into NasD, but NasD can't exactly unsiege and go either. So he's relying a lot on these Vultures to roam around the map to kind of create that buffer for the siege tanks. But Romson is, again, like, look, if you're at my base, then you got nothing at home. And he's got a couple of siege tanks, but really, this is not a lot.
Oh, it's through a choke, though. I don't know. Yeah, it's not worth it. As the siege tanks line up again, not worth it.
Maybe if the Archon was on the front lines, but either way, gonna fall back.
A War Prism would have done wonders right there.
Actually, a Dark Templar is doing wonders right now, clearing out most of the tanks that Romson set up in the siege. There's only 3 tanks remaining, but there's no units at the base, unfortunately.
Yeah. The thing about War Prism is not only does the splash damage really help, but it also takes up a shot. And as we talked about before, tanks fire a lot slower but harder, so that really adds up. Unfortunately, Romson just... he's really trying to hold on, but I think that if he always had the time to think, maybe he'd be thinking time to try something different rather than just Dragoons.
He gets around the tanks, though. He's in the natural base of NasD. That's not a fight you should take. I'd say just go up the ramp. Taking a couple of siege tanks out, it's not going to mean much, because he's going to lose all his Dragoons for it.
Yeah, I agree. And all the Spider-Man's getting laid down, too, while he focuses everything else.
bleeding out slowly. There's a game. I'm going to recommend this real quick, guys. Ryung versus Innovation from Group B of the Starbow Invitational. I'm not talking about the finals or anything like that, but from Group B. Zombie Group and I had the honor and the pleasure of casting it. But if you want to see how effective worker drops from a dropship, or in this case a warp prism, can be versus a siege line, look up that series, because it was insane. They were killing 100, like maybe not hundreds, but like plenty of tanks by just dropping combination of Goliaths and workers on top of each other's siege lines. And the splash damage is insane because it hits so much harder.
Yeah. Well, NasD did finally pull back. Romson is really, really down on his luck. He doesn't have a third, doesn't have tech, besides, you know, Dark Templar, which have been helping, but I don't know if they're really going to be that much of a help. And he's also down by a lot of supply. NasD is having a perfectly fine economy at almost 70 SCVs.
Yeah, sorry about the mouse spasm there, guys. We forgot to turn off mouse scrolling, but Dragoons once again getting trapped in by spider mines. Really nice moves here out of NasD, and it just feels like Romson doesn't, like, he's got upgrades, but it doesn't feel like it.
He's a really good player in StarCraft 2, obviously, so his mechanics are great and all that, but
I mean, I love these Dark Templar little run-bys he's doing, the bits of damage here and there, the counterattacks instead of getting choked up in the natural, but it's not cutting it here in the end.
Yeah, NasD just seems like he really practices a lot of Starbow. He has a very good control, or even actually maybe practices more Brood War. I feel like even though Starbow isn't exactly like Brood War, people who play Brood War more than StarCraft 2 actually have an upper hand here. But he just seemed very